third meeting of the Joint Cooperation Committee between Venezuela and Turkey took place in Venezuela with the signing of 8 bilateral cooperation agreements. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov affirmed that Russia will not capitulate to Western sanctions. The United Nations regretted the lack of international financial aid to Yemen, which is experiencing a humanitarian crisis as a result of the war that began in 2014. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We're going to begin with the news. The third meeting of the Joint Cooperation Committee between Venezuela and Turkey took place in Venezuela with the signing of 8 bilateral cooperation agreements. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Turkey, Mevlut Cavusoglu, together with the Secretarial Vice President of Economy of Venezuela, Tarek El Al-Saimi, signed 8 cooperation agreements on youth, sports, industry, tourism, fishing and aquaculture, education, health and productive investments. During the meeting, El Al-Saimi reaffirmed that the relations between Ankara and Caracas are an example of cooperation and respect for the international community. Meanwhile, the Turkish Chancellor, Foreign Minister, highlighted the economic progress made by Venezuela in the face of the pandemic and rejected the sanctions imposed against the country. On the other hand, the Venezuelan president praised the peace diplomacy promoted by Turkey in the framework of the conflict in Ukraine.
I have taken the opportunity to congratulate the Foreign Minister and the Turkish government for the peace efforts with Russia and Ukraine, and we wish them the greatest success in their diplomatic efforts, and that sooner rather than later we may have the good news of peace.
For his part, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu stressed Venezuela's economic growth despite unilateral coercive measures and the COVID-19 crisis.
Mr. President, I'm pleased to see the progress that Venezuela is making. We see that the unilateral sanctions and the pandemic complicated the situation a lot. And also, we're always against unilateral sanctions. However, I think they are going to pass very soon. And I see a lot of economic activity. I see a lot of business in your country. And we're pleased to see it. And we believe in Venezuela. We always support Venezuela.
Tarek El Al-Saimi, Vice President of Economy, highlighted the importance of Venezuela-Turkey relations in the strengthening of multilateralism and peace diplomacy.
Bilateral cooperation reaffirms before the international community that we are on the right path in the defense of multilateralism and peace diplomacy of peace, which urges us to work with a high and strategic vision in the construction of a better, more just and equitable world without interventionism and for the supreme happiness of both nations.
And the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro held a meeting this Friday with the International Democratic Women's Federation within the framework of the World Congress of Women. During the meeting, the Venezuelan President emphasized the importance of holding an event like this when the country is growing. Maduro also pointed out that more than 90 delegates from at least 27 countries from all over the world are participating in the event. During the meeting, the head of state received from one of the delegates a Colombian flag as a gift and as a representation of brotherhood between both peoples. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador informed that its phone call with Joe Biden finished and it lasted almost an hour. López Obrador said through his social networks that it was a cordial conversation and that Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard will be in Washington on Monday to define the Summit of the Americas, to be held from June 6 to the 10th in Los Angeles, California. The central issues addressed by both presidents were the causes of migration with much greater emphasis on Central America and that the Summit of the Americas, all countries of the continent, without exception, said the Mexican Foreign Minister. The caravan of mothers of missing migrants departed Friday from El Salvador towards Mexico in order to investigate what happened to their children and relatives. The marchers left from Plaza El Divino Salvador del Mundo to Guatemala with final destination Mexico, where their relatives made contact with them for the last time. It is expected that relatives from other nations will join the caravan during its transit through Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. Organizations demand that the authorities of the region respect the rights of all migrants. The Prime Minister of Belize described as the crown of the visit the mural he unveiled on his country this Friday afternoon in the town of Jaimanitas, west of Havana. The event was part of the official visit of the Prime Minister of Belize, John Antonio Briceño, to Cuba. At the inauguration of the mural, the ambassador of Belize in Cuba explained that they plan to do in Belize something similar to the work done by artist Fuster in Jaimanitas with his community project Fusterlandia, where with sculptures, paintings, and colorful mosaics, a humble community has been enriched. Jose Fuster explained that what motivated him to dedicate one of his works to Belize was the love for the Caribbean and the purpose of making the Cuban know the culture of other countries.
This is like the crown of the visit. We can have here a mural that represents Belize. Thank you very much to you and to this governor, so that everyone can know more about Belize. And now there are going to be several agreements on health, education, culture, and ways of how we continue working together, Belize and Cuba, and maintaining that brotherhood and that cooperation between the two countries.
The ninth round of consultations between foreign ministers of China and 9 Caribbean countries closed today with a consensus to join forces on strengthened mutual trust to jointly face the challenges of today's world. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said they will strive to consolidate a comprehensive strategic partnership and propose to increase exchanges and cooperation in the areas of trade, construction, infrastructure, education, culture, and tourism between Beijing and the Caribbean countries. They will also work to protect and consolidate the basic rules of international relations, strengthen unity, and protect the multilateral system based on the rules of the United Nations. Wang said China will advocate that the international community pay more attention to the challenges of small island states. Let us take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov affirmed that Russia will not capitulate to Western sanctions. The foreign minister stressed that Russia concluded that it cannot depend on the West for anything, especially strategic spheres. He added that it is still possible to renew relations if the West realizes its mistake. Regarding the new payment scheme for gas supplies, the foreign minister assured that the majority of Moscow's key partners accepted the new procedure. On the other hand, regarding the suspension of supplies to Bulgaria and Poland, Lavrov said that these countries put their ideological ambitions before the interests of their citizens. He also stressed that Russia announced a new payment scheme due to the fact that Western partners stole more than $300 billion of what they paid for in gas. Headline inflation in the Eurozone rose in the first quarter of this year due to the conflict in Ukraine and the coronavirus pandemic. Estimates from the European Union Statistics Office, Eurostat, show that economic growth rose to 0.2% last quarter compared to 0.3% in the fourth quarter of last year. The GDP figures point to a sharp slowdown in the Eurozone, where inflation rose by more than 7.5% this month compared to 7.4% last month. Inflation in Germany will rise to 7.4% in April, according to preliminary figures released by the Federal Statistical Office. Food prices rose by 8.5%, while energy prices, including domestic energy and fuels, continue to rise rapidly, with 35.3% since the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on February 24th. Energy prices risen sharply, having considerably impact on the high inflation rate. The Russian Defense Ministry reported on Friday that Russian aerospace forces destroyed military facilities in Kiev, the Ukrainian capital. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov confirmed at a press conference the precision-guided missiles attack on 38 targets in Kiev. The Artyom Missile Technology Factory, a fuel depot, and a radar station were among the targets. Ukrainian Emergency Services announced on Thursday night that a nearby residential building was reportedly damaged on its lower floors by the Russian attack. Local authorities indicated that at least 10 people were injured inside the 25-story building. The Donetsk People's Republic forces delivered humanitarian aid to civilian population in the recently liberated city of Mariupol, and its leader Denis Pushilin talked about foreign mercenaries fighting the Ukrainian side. Our special envoy Alejandro Kirk gives us the details.
The head of the Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushilin, was here today in Mariupol delivering humanitarian aid for the population. He's been touring the city for the last couple of days, also giving medals to servicemen, and he spoke to the press about the situation of foreign mercenaries fighting with Ukrainian forces at the steel works Azovstal, where there's still some resistance underground. This is what he said. Let's take a listen.
137 settlements were liberated from the Ukrainian regime and came fully under our control. But in terms of percentages, it's about 60% of the territory of the Donetsk People's Republic within the constitutional boundaries. According to our intelligence services, according to the statements given by the prisoners directly who are with us and who were in Azovstal, they speak about 400 foreign mercenaries who are there. Who exactly? Specifically, the names are yet to be determined, and that will probably be after Azovstal is fully liberated. The data that we have, we can talk about British, Canadians, Americans, Romanians, we can talk about Moroccans who are also there, and other European countries mostly.
Denis Pushilin, head of the Donetsk People's Republic.
South Korea will ease its outdoor mask mandate starting next week as COVID-19 infections and hospitalizations continue to decline. Health authorities in Daejeon said that from May 2nd, masks will only be required at outdoor gatherings of more than 50 people, including sport and cultural events with potentially large crowds. Masks are still required indoors and on public transportation. Health workers have diagnosed a daily average of around 63,000 new cases in the past 7 days, including 50,000 in the latest 24 hours, a decline from mid-March when the country was reporting hundreds of thousands of infections a day. At the height of an Omicron-driven surge, hospitalizations and deaths are also slowing down. Less than a third of the country's intensive care units designated for COVID-19 patients were occupied.
Until now, it has been mandatory to wear a mask outdoors if one cannot maintain a 2-meter distance from others, but starting from May 2, people will no longer need to wear a mask outdoors, except when attending rallies, performances, and sport games where more than 50 people gather. The number of COVID-19 patients has been steadily decreasing over the past 6 weeks, even after the social distancing measures were lifted. This week, the number of new virus cases decreased by 30% compared to last week. The number of new critically ill patients is also decreasing, and the bed occupancy rate is being maintained at a low level.
The Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, Manasseh Sogavare, criticizes on Friday Australia's censorship of the security agreement signed between his country and China. Sogavare said in an address to Parliament that the nation was not notified when Australia signed a defense agreement known as AUKUS with the United Kingdom and the United States in 2021 involving nuclear submarines. The Premier accused the Canberra authorities of acting hypocritically since AUKUS is far from being transparent. He also indicated that AUKUS will affect the families of the South Pacific area by promoting the circulation of nuclear submarines in the region. Manasseh Sogavare emphasized that he will not allow a Chinese military base in the country because it would not be of national or regional interest. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations regretted the lack of international financial aid to Yemen, which is experiencing a humanitarian crisis as a result of the war that began in 2014. Through a statement, the multilateral organization's Population Fund assured that the lack of funding forced it to reduce protection interventions in Yemen, while warning that at least 23 million citizens will require some type of humanitarian assistance during 2022. The institution affirmed that more than 4 million people in Yemen were displaced from their homes as a consequence of a devastated economy and a precarious health system. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned in a recent report that by 2022, some 2.2 million children and 1.3 million pregnant or lactating women will suffer acute malnutrition in the country. Kenya held a state funeral for former President Mwai Kibaki, who died aged 90 last week and whose decade in power was marked by economic revival. Kibaki was the third head of state in Kenya's history, serving from December 2002 to April 2013. Benches at Nyayo National Stadium in the heart of the capital, Nairobi, were full under a heavy sky as the procession accompanying Kibaki's coffin arrived. Alongside ambassadors, officials, and members of the government, a dozen heads of state and prime ministers were expected from across the African continent, including South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa and South Sudanese President Salva Kiir.
Fellow Kenyans, we congregate here today to honor one of the founding fathers of our beloved nation. We are here not only to mourn an incalculable loss, but also to celebrate a magnificent life. We celebrate a man of faith, a man of family, a man of honor, and a man who always put Kenya and Kenyans first.
We remember President Kibaki for the leadership that he demonstrated, not only to Kenya, but also to the African continent. We remember him for his commitment to the people of Kenya and indeed to all of us as Africans.
Libya is losing tens of millions of US dollars a day from the shutdown of its oil facilities, while global prices are their highest in years.
The answer to the question about the damage to the Libyan state during the closures, of course, there will be a shortage in the revenue. The shortage in the amount produced reached around 600,000 barrels of crude oil daily. And then, when you see the rising prices today, even if the average price is around $100, that means the figure is at least $60 million per day.
Thousands of Iranians took to the streets Friday to join annual pro-Palestinian rallies as Israeli-Palestinian clashes in Jerusalem left dozens injured. The state broadcaster Arab reported that the Quds Day commemorations, which are held on the last Friday of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, were launched in 1979 by Iran's revolutionary leader Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Flag-waving protesters across Iran chanted "Death to America" and "Death to Israel." They also held up signs reading "Jerusalem is ours" and "Quds Day is the day of Islam." The rallies took place in the capital Tehran and several Iranian cities. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said on Friday that the United States has been using its human rights report as a tool to defame and coerce other countries. The Chinese official made the remarks at a press briefing when commenting on the 2021 country's reports on human rights practices released by the U.S. State Department recently. The report has been widely criticized by many countries, including Cuba, India, Iran, and Turkey.
In the so-called 2021 country reports on human rights practices, the U.S. makes irresponsible remarks on the human rights situations of 198 countries and regions around the world, except itself. The U.S. deliberately missed itself. After criticizing so many countries, it will naturally meet opposition globally. Just as the spokesman for Iranian Foreign Ministry, Saeed Khatibzadeh, said, nobody can expect the U.S. government, which is addicted to lying, to tell the truth. When talking about human rights, the U.S. is shedding crocodile tears.
Vietnam launched a new attraction for tourists with a head for Heads on Friday, with the opening of a glass-bottom bridge suspended 150 meters above a lush jungle. The back-long pedestrian bridge, whose name translates to White Dragon, snakes around dizzying cliff faces before spanning a dramatic valley between two peaks, hitting a total length of 632 meters. The floor of the bridge is made from French-produced tempered glass, making it strong enough to support up to 450 people at a time, while giving them a spectacular view of the greenery in the gorge far below. The company said it is the world's longest glass-bottom bridge, surpassing a 526-meter structure in Guangdong, China. Officials from Guinness World Records are expected to verify the claim next month.
I think all is great. Stepping on the bridge and looking down was scary at first, but if we continue confidently, it is very amazing.
As a local resident, I hope more tourists in and outside the province, even abroad, will come here to experience this bridge to increase income for the investor and the province. The bridge was named Bac Long, showing a path of cloud that links the mountains. When standing on the bridge, visitors will be able to have a wide view and admire the beautiful nature. In order to provide visitors with the best experience, we have applied automatic control technology. By limiting the number of people at the same moment, we will limit no more than 450 people on the bridge at the same time.
And we have come to the end of this news. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.